Hope you're having a good day. We've got us a ficus microcarpa and a terracotta pot here. It is over a rock. And I put it, this was just a little tiny stick that I found or whatever. You know, ficus, I'd say cutting, but it wasn't freshly cut. It was actually in the side of a pot. But I put it in here with the rock, and the first two pictures here will be from December 2018, and then I got two more there from November of 2020. And then here we are today. I had originally promised myself that I would kind of let it grow unchecked until it broke out of this pot, just as a little kind of a challenge, kind of a silly little idea or whatever. I have had to cut it back several times. I had to cut it, if you guys can really see, I had to cut it here, and then it kind of started growing out from there. And I cut this at one point. They were just getting obnoxiously long. And since I have cut it a couple times, that was all this summer. And since I have cut it a couple times, I've decided I'm going to go ahead. I am probably going to leave it in the pot for a little while longer. I mean, I know I'm not going to repot it today. It's not the season for repotting. It is December in the tropics in Florida. It's wintertime. I mean, our nights are long and days are short and everything, but it is nice and warm. I could. I mean, this was potted December of 2018. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to defoliate it just so I can kind of see what's going on in here a little bit. I mean, you can, you know, from what you guys are seeing there, you can't hardly even tell it's on a rock or anything. And then after I defoliate it, I'll go ahead and wire it up. And then my thought process here is that I'll wire it up. I'll leave the growing tips intact. I'll go through and as I, defoliate, leave the growing tips intact, wire it up, get some movement, and then just kind of see what it looks like over the rest of the winter. And then in a couple months, come through and just cut all those growing tips off. It should keep its momentum up. It should actually start growing a little more since it's going to lose a bunch of leaves today and everything. Then, when I come back after a couple months, I'll cut the growing tips off and leave the wire on. And then as it kind of back buds with that wire on, it really should kind of give me something interesting to go with there. And then whenever I take the wire off, I'll just make the decision at that point whether or not I'm going to repot it this coming up spring, or just kind of continue to let it just kind of develop in there with the rock. First thing I'm going to do, where I have this sitting, I have it kind of sitting in a little bit of an area where I don't really pay all that much attention other than just watering them from time to time. Didn't even realize, sitting on a cinder block, I didn't even realize that it had gotten this thing coming off there. Almost tripped me up when I went to go get it because I couldn't imagine it having an escape route from that point, but it was kind of off the back side where I couldn't even see where it was. There's a few more down here. And I guess I'll go ahead and trim them off too. Since it is over a rock and I know it's in just regular potting soil, I may consider just setting it on the ground for the rest of the winter. Keep it from blowing over any. Let it get some more escape roots. And just... Alright, so I mentioned I was going to go ahead and defoliate so I can get in here and see what's going on. I guess I'll kind of get started while I talk, but the other thing I'm going to do at the same time is just do a little branch selection, because at one point I had wanted to let it go. This one had gotten at least another foot taller than that. This one at some point too, I think that was a little earlier this spring. This one was like kind of more towards late summer. But I'm going to do a little branch selection too, and the idea is I'm going to leave any branches that I keep, I'll leave those growing tips, and then everything else I'll just take the leaves off. Probably leave a little bit of foliage just out at the end with the growing tip too. And then instead of having just all this straight growth, I can go ahead and get a little movement in it. And even here, I don't know if you guys can really see that or not, but where I cut this tip off here, got another growth there coming right out of the top. What I might do is just cut it off there for taper, or cut that one off the top just because it is top growth or whatever. You let them go like that, they sure will get some big leaves. This should be an interesting tree. You can get these leaves pretty small. You can keep them, I could probably keep them about the size of maybe say a nickel or something like that. And you can see now, I mean, they're pretty big leaves out there. But once you start pruning and more than once every 2 years or something like that, you can get a lot of leaf reduction out of a ficus. Get it opened up a little bit, starting to get a little bit of an idea what I got going on. I've already seen a few branches I'd like to think about taking out. So I'm going to take them out now so that I'm not wasting my time defoliating what isn't going to stay anyway. First, I'd like to point out this branch here and wanted to get some wire because of how long and straight they are. And then I was kind of testing it. It was super, I was thinking it was super lignified up there, but it's not. It's got a aerial root that had came from the branch on there. Kind of the idea that I wanted to have happen with leaving it in there that long without doing any work to it or anything. But now I'm intensely curious, and I'm thinking I might have to repot it in February just to see what's in here or whatever. But we'll see how it's developing with the work I'm doing it today or whatever by then. But there's this spot here has there's actually 4 branches coming out, like kind of at a good level, and then a fourth one kind of popping straight up. I don't want 3, and I don't want that one straight up, and those 2 are together. So I'll just do that. Should help with some taper too. And then here, there's a couple, this one's coming straight up off there. This is the one that I cut, the last one I cut actually this year. And then kind of look like those got burnt just a little bit, probably just on the time of the year that I cut them off, or that I pruned that. And then probably even consider when I was talking about doing my February, just cutting all the pruning tips or whatever, I might cut that whole thing off. For right now, I'll just leave that on there for energy. And then there was a couple more I saw, wanted to take out before I continued defoliating. Oh, this one is another trident. That's probably still pretty deep up in there because that was actually where I stopped. So you guys probably can't see that all that well. Stump is here. And so I was going to do the one coming straight up, but that could eventually, maybe one day, blend on up in there and be the apex or whatever. But I took this one off because it seemed like it would help with taper a little bit more. And then the last one here, you guys can see there's one coming out right at the base with one right on top of it. And so there's 2 coming out of that same spot before any other branches come out anywhere. I was going to take out the lowest one right with the substrate, but I am thinking because of the way the rock is, that whenever I go to repot it up out of the, when I try to show a little more of the rock, it'll also be tilted like that a little bit more. The stump, well, we'll just have to, again, see that whenever I do that in February or whatever. Because the stump is attached to the rock, but it's not really leaning on it that much right there. So I want to leave that lower one, but I will take out the one just above that. And that was actually what I was in the middle of defoliating when I decided that I needed to maybe take some more out before I finished defoliating. And I did change that angle a little bit, tried to give you guys a little bit of a better view of the rock and everything in there. And what we're looking at. But the idea is that for today, because it's not summertime or my my real season for growing or whatever. If it was, I'd be repotting this thing now, I do believe, and I'd be hard pruning it probably back to almost nothing. But the idea now is, because I've let it kind of get this leggy, is I'm going to go ahead, allowing probably up to that little bunch of foliage there. That'll keep the momentum growing. The branch will continue to thicken, and then in mid-February or whenever it is I decide I'm going to repot it or just work it some more or whatever, go ahead and just take that whole end off, and then there should be plenty of energy left, to continue back budding. But I have a little change of heart about just a couple of them. First off, these, not first off, this is just what I'm going to do here, but this one and these 2 both have aerial roots kind of going right into the rock. Or not into the rock, but into the substrate and around the rock. And you can see they're probably long enough to be wrapped around the rock, or at least be part of that feature whenever I pull it up out of there. So rather than trying to wire them, because it would be nearly impossible to do so without damaging the aerial roots, and also because they're a little bit These, you know, if I do kind of go like that a little bit, maybe they might be the apex, maybe this one might come off, maybe that one might become the apex. But these won't, I don't think I'd ever change the angle like that. That would put the larger part of the stump lower, and that wouldn't make any sense to me or whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take these off, like right above the pot. I don't want them, and there's a really good chance it'll get growth and go into the pot more, but I wanted to leave that off of it just a little bit so it wouldn't like start curling up around in the pot there or anything. And then the same thing here, just go ahead and take that off right there. And then I'll get wire on everything else that I'm gonna do. All right, I've gotten some wire on there. And first things first, before I even worry about getting any movement there, as I was defoliating it, I was thinking about taking this branch off, and then in the interest of just not wanting to cross any wires or having to double up too much, I am going to go ahead and take it off, just probably help with taper and stuff anyway. And then also, same thing with this one up here. I didn't get any on that one. And kind of a weak branch, coming out a little spot there where it was really busy, where I pruned it once before. And so I'll just take both of those off. And then I'll start down low. First, I have these two little ones here. As I kind of get some movement, I will keep in mind that future will probably look something a little more like that than it does now. But at the same time, it is where it is now. So this one I know I'm going up with. This one I just like to maybe get it away from itself some. And then at least get an extra bend in there besides just, and what I mean by away from itself is away from the one I was connecting it with there. And then same thing with that one, just kind of away from its little twin and then back a little bit. Then this one is really the longest, wired right to the foliage there. Have the intent of just taking that off here in a couple months and getting it to back bud more. But for now, I do want that branch to continue thickening some. So I'm going to kind of come up with it a bit and then back away some. Something about like that. And then this is the one that it was anchored to. And again, thinking about the way it's going to be there one day. This one's probably the thickest of them all. I might have to see, yeah, if I can get at least something like that going, yeah. Might have been nice to get a third bend in it. And that guy broke some. So I broke it a little bit right there. And so what I did is just kind of turned it back up a little bit more. Had to take some of the movement out of it or whatever. But that should actually give it a little piece of interest. We'll see what happens. I won't hide it from you. You guys can ask me or whatever, but whenever I do the update, I'll let you know what happened there. I knew I was trying to do a little bit too much there. I could kind of feel it. But that should actually callus over. Might give it something interesting in there as well. Maybe even just wind up pruning it right to there whenever I get ready to do this sow in February. And then take that one. Only 2 coils of wire on that, so I just might have to be happy with that. Also, keeping in mind that I'm going to be cutting this one day, so I want to get the movement more down here. I'm more worried about the movement towards the trunk than I am out there. So with that one, I'll do something like, well, actually, went a completely different direction there. At first I went into towards that one, kind of forgot about all this negative space over here. And that'll be about it for today. I do think that this little piece there will heal up, should be fine. I mean, if not, the plant itself will be fine.